Welcome to Uncovering Spirituality, where we embark on a journey of exploration and discovery into consciousness, energy, and the spirit world. Join us as we delve into the mysteries of spirituality and uncover the universal truths that connect us all. Hello, I'm Kathy Upper, founder of Spiritual Niagara. I'm also the consulting visionary and podcast host for Spiritual Canada, and this is Uncovering Spirituality. Joining me today is Marybeth Haines, the gal who speaks with animals. Marybeth has been connected with animals since childhood, but it was in adulthood that she recognized these early experiences as her calling to communicate their messages of guidance and inspiration. Today, as an award-winning animal communication specialist, she integrates her skills with transformative harmonic egg technology, compassionate pet bereavement support, and her roles as a published author and coach. Through her multifaceted expertise, Marybeth helps you uncover the deeper reasons behind your bond with your pet, explore the lessons within your relationship, and gain profound insights into your pet's experiences. At her wellness center, Harmonic Egg Niagara, Marybeth offers sound and light therapy for both pets and their people, providing insights that enhance understanding and harmony with one another. Hello, Marybeth, and thanks so much for joining me today.
Hey, Kathy, it is so great to be here. I've been really looking forward to this time.
I know that today's topic is something that so many pet owners will be able to benefit from. We all wonder how we can better communicate with our furried loved ones and what they might need from us as well. But first, I'd like us to start our conversation learning more about how you got started in this journey of animal communication. You had said that you had started as a child, and there may be other children out there that, may be receiving those messages, and, the parents are kind of wondering, well, what's this about, right? So I think it would be great to hear about your history.
For sure. And I think if we all kind of go back to what it's like to be a child, right? And go back to that playful curiosity and looking at things through that playful lens, it's no wonder we as children were much more connected to animals, to nature, to our toys, to the imagination, right? And so I think that when we kind of go, if you want to take like a trip back in time with me to when I was younger, I grew up on a farm. So I grew up with animals all the time. So my parents moved my brother, sister, and I to a farm in Wainfleet, Ontario. So I grew up there from the age of 2 to the age of 22. And throughout that time, think of an animal that might be on a farm. I had that as my friend, my family member, and so much more. So think cows, pigs, horses, chickens, goats, ducks, rabbits, cats, dogs. I mean, pretty much frogs even, right? Because we lived on a farm, so I was in nature a lot. So I always found that I had a kinship with these animals because I would go out and I would like be their school teacher, or I'd be playing some sort of role that day. And here it was, I thought that I was like teaching them, but really they were teaching me. And they were teaching me because I was going through a lot of stuff in my life growing up as a kid. We go through things being a highly sensitive person, especially not understanding why I was feeling the way I was feeling, or why I would be picking up on certain emotions, not understanding they weren't mine. And the animals were always there to ground me, to show me that I was safe, to be able to protect me in many different ways. And so it's kind of like, how did I get to be able to hear their voice? I think that I always did. I just didn't realize that that's what was happening, because that's just what was normal to me. And then when I grew up, right, And I moved out of the house and I moved to St. Catharines, and right, I kind of lost it because I wasn't with animals all the time. And then as I got older, and then when I finally figured out what I wanted to do when I grew up, right? And that wasn't until like my 40s, I came to realize that, well, this isn't what I want to do. This is what I'm supposed to do. And I feel like I'm at home when I do this. And so that's how I was able to reconnect with animals, because I've always had animals in my life. I just we never lose the ability, because we all have it. We all have the ability to communicate with animals. It's just tapping into the right frequency, the right radio station kind of, analogy to be able to hear their voice.
Wow, that's interesting. I'm just really curious. If you're around so many animals, um, how were you receiving messages? Like what, as a child, what were you experiencing?
That's a great question. So a lot of it I remember, and then there's a lot of it that I don't. So because it was just like I said, from the age of 2, right? So a lot of it was always through connection. And when I think of connection, it was through feel. So a lot of times I would feel that animal. I would feel the love they were sharing with me. If I was having a really bad day, or there was something that was going on, or I was going through a hard time, they would do something to make me feel better, and I would receive it from them through feel, and I would always feel better. We had, times where, like, I remember there were three heifers, so they were female calves, and I remember sitting with them and going out to the barn, and I remember the one just saying, "Come hop up on me," right? I didn't hear her say it, but I felt her say it. And so I came and I sat on her, and I must have been maybe 9, 10, maybe. And she was just like, "I'm here, talk to me," right? And so we would have these conversations, and she would listen, and she would just, lick, and, she would just receive. So I would hear a lot. It was always unique, right? Because whatever animal it was always unique in how they were able to communicate with me and have me receive their messages. But the main part, and I'm a big kinesthetic person, right? So I feel a lot. So even when I communicate with animals now, I'll hear them, I'll see images, but feel is my most strongest. And that's how they pretty much, there was my horse Thunder. I remember when I was galloping on him for the very first time, all by myself, and I was so proud, and I thought that I was doing the greatest thing. And then his saddle slipped and I flew off, and I felt like a huge failure. And Thunder, through his ability to let me know that, because I was afraid to get back up on a horse again. Like, I was afraid to ride him. I was afraid to ride any horse. And through his ability to communicate with me, he helped me move through fear. And he was actually my teacher for me, to teach me that saying, how to get back up on the horse. And through that, he was able to do that. And again, a lot of it came through feel, but a lot of it came through his actions too. And so when I would witness what he would do, or how he would look at me, or things like that, then I would feel the message that was coming behind that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. I'm getting so many chills while you're saying that. So, like for me, that's so much confirmation that
Love
what you're
it.
saying is true. That's
Yeah,
a validation, I guess you'd say.
it's
Because I'm the
beautiful.
same. I'm a feel kind of person as well.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. No, I understand that too. It reminds me of when I really wasn't feeling well, and my previous dog, Kira, she would come right up to me and she would put her head like right on me, and it was I would look at her like, how do you know? Like they know when you're not feeling well, and when you need comforting as well, right?
They do. They do. They are healers in so many forms. And like you said, she just knew. And they have that beautiful ability. That's how animals tick. They get it because they communicate energetically, right? They communicate through energy. They're masters at using that.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, yeah, they can't talk to us, right? So yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. I get it. Now that you've put it that way, it helps me to understand it much better.
I'm so
So
glad.
how do you think that we can hear our animals' voices? How do you think we can maybe develop that, or how can it be a little bit clearer for us, I guess?
Yeah, that's a great question. So very first of all, right off the top, we all can do this. We all can do this. There is not one of us humans that cannot do this. We all have the ability, but for some of us, it might be a little more challenging than others, just like somebody could be a beautiful surgeon. But put me in the trying to learn surgery, it's just that's not how I tick, right? So I could learn how to do it, but it might take me a little bit more to get that skill, or to be the beautiful artist, or things like that, right? So just to know that we all have this ability. We were born with this ability. So when you look at, like, think of a baby and think of a puppy, and think of how that baby and puppy might interact with each other. So maybe not a newborn baby, maybe a baby that's a little more at the age of the awareness around them, and think about how they would communicate. So that baby doesn't speak dog, that puppy doesn't speak human. So how are they communicating? Well, they've got eye contact, they've got some body language, they've got some grunts and groans, or maybe some barks and yips and things like that. And that's great. But let's bridge it out further into senses that we're not taught how to use every day. And let's go into the senses of what that baby is feeling from that animal, or what that baby is receiving in images, or messages from that animal, and how that animal is also picking up on the same. And that's all done telepathically. And when I used to learn about telepathically, I used to think that it was some airy fairy thing that was like so hard to learn and very woo woo and all that kind of stuff. And really, all it means is feeling or emoting at a distance. So it's sharing energy from one to the other. And we just receive it in a telepathic way. So to go back to, we all have this ability, and we all had this ability when we came in as a baby. We tend to have lost the ability. We didn't lose it for good, it just went dormant because we learned how to speak and how to use words and articulate. And then we went to school and we learned reading and writing, and we learned math, and we learned a lot of things that we have to use our thinking brain for, right? And using our thinking brain isn't a bad thing. We need our thinking brain. I mean, for my wellness center, I'm taking some business courses so that I can run my center better. And last night, I was in a 2-hour class learning all about accounting and bookkeeping and all of that for the business. That was very much being in my thinking brain, right? We need that to do certain things. When it comes to hearing our animals and hearing their voices, let's first of all look at what hearing means. And I'm doing that in air quotes, because hearing does not necessarily mean with our physical ears, right? When we think, Kathy, can you hear me, right? So you're like, you're trying to hear my voice with your ears. When we talk with our animals, we can hear them in many different ways. We can hear them through feeling, with what we talked about when I was a kid. We can hear them through thoughts that come into our mind. We can receive kind of like images, or kind of have these pictures come forward to us, and we can receive messages, and we can come in just a knowing, right? We can just get these feelings or these knowings of, you know what, Fluffy's not feeling well right now. I better check in on him, that kind of thing. And so to kind of make this really simple, because we can make it really hard, but we don't have to. It's moving out of our thinking brain and moving into our sensing brain. It's the senses that we're not taught how to use every day. And when we move into the sensing brain, we will hear, feel, see, and experience so much more with our animals. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. I'm curious. Is it also like a visceral, a physical feeling that you sometimes get as well?
It can be, absolutely. So when you say a visceral or a physical feeling, so it's kind of like if an animal's sharing that they're not feeling well, I might start feeling like I'm going to get sick to my stomach. I know I'm not because I know it's not mine, but I do get that visceral kind of feeling of what it would feel like to be nauseated. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And when we have that ability, it's really important to know that we're feeling that for a reason and we're receiving that for a reason, but we want to make sure that we don't take that on as ours, right? Because when we take it on as ours, then things can kind of get a little confusing and then we could think that we're starting to not feel well, right?
Right,
But
right.
you absolutely can. You absolutely can receive their messages that way as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's very similar to psychic abilities, right?
Mhm.
Or it's pretty well kind of the same thing, actually, is what
Yeah.
I should say.
Yeah, it is.
Um,
It is.
yeah, and you're
Absolutely.
trusting your intuitive nudges as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that I think that when we come back into remembrance of what we already have, the abilities that we already have, when we come back into that remembrance, we just need to reawaken it. And so a kind of cool way to do it is to think about, okay, when we were an egg, right? That egg got, so the egg was fertilized and then we began growing into an embryo. Well, the very first thing that, or one of the first things that gets in that creation of the embryo starts in our gut. And then neural cells form, and then it creates the spinal column, and then our heart becomes formed. And then the neural cells go up the spinal column, and then it's our head brain, the brain that we're so used to using, is then formed. So we really have three brains. Have you ever heard about what does your gut tell you? Or what is that instinctual gut feeling that you have, right?
Yeah.
That's our first brain. Our second brain is our heart center. I mean, look up Heart Math Institute. They've actually looked at science and they've actually discovered that this beautiful organ that pumps blood through our systems and does so much for our bodies is so much more than that. There's an actual sentience with it.
Yes.
And then we have the brain in our head, and that's the brain that that's the thinking brain, that's the brain that we're so used to using. So when we connect with our animals, we need our thinking brain, but let's use all three. So a great way to do it is to become mindful of the brain in our head, the brain in our heart, the brain in our abdomen. Let's meet in the middle at the heart, and let's come from our heart instead of our heads. When we come from our heads and we're trying to hear or listen or find out what our animal's trying to tell us, we start to think. We start to say, what's Fluffy saying? I need to figure it out. Are you saying this? I don't understand. I'm getting confused. And then we walk ourselves out of it, right? Because we're too much in that thinking process. So let's meet in the middle. Let's come from the heart and let's start sensing and feeling and experiencing. And when we can sense from our heart space, we then begin to pick up those subtle communications that become louder. Because our
Right.
animals' communications are subtle right now when we don't understand how to hear them. Again, we don't speak animal, they don't speak human, but we do share energy together, and it's sharing that energy together that translates those messages for us. Does that make sense? I know I'm asking that question a lot, but I just want to make sure if it makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It does because I've experienced it.
Right,
I
right,
do know what it's like to, sense the truth from my heart rather than my head.
right,
And it's
right.
something that I've been actually practicing a lot lately. Um, and that's really, learning to follow your intuition, right? And that
Absolutely.
goes with anything, right? When you're even making a decision about, you know, um, what your goals and dreams are, it's best to follow those intuitive nudges rather than, what your brain thinks you should do, or, what your parents thought you should do, or,
Right,
rather
right.
than coming from the cognitive part of your brain, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, I know, because I did actually have the experience of having a session with you with my
Mhm.
dog Sam when I first got him. When we had gotten him from a dog rescue, and he was really crazy when we got him. Like, he was out of control. So I really appreciated having you come in and give me some messages, because I didn't know what was going on there. So I'm just curious, how can you translate the amount of messages that you get? Because the amount of information that you gave me about what was going on with him, how he was feeling, um, maybe some of his history, that, as much as he was going to be sharing with you, like, how do you, I don't even know how to ask this correctly. How do you get all that information? I guess is what I want to know.
Like, how does the information come through, or how do I
Yeah,
translate
are
it
you
to tell
hearing?
you?
Because you get pretty detailed, like when you're talking about, well, I'm hearing that his history wasn't so good, and he's not wanting to share too much with me, but he's telling me this, or like, is that a part of feeling? There's got to be some words in it. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. So with me personally, so we will all, when we start communicating with our animals, we will all receive information in different ways because we all learn in different ways and we all communicate in different ways. So you and I talked about being very kinesthetic, and feel is very strong for us, right? And so, but for others, feel might not be their strongest, and their strongest might be actually receiving words and hearing them, right? Like having those words come forward, or maybe they're more clairvoyant and they see images a lot more from that animal. So it really depends on all of us on how we tick and what's most strongest for us. For me, like for example, when Sam and I were talking, when he was sharing all that information with me, what happens with me is I get all this information that kind of comes at me in bits and pieces, and then I have to now translate that and bring it forward. And so what happens is a lot of it comes through feel. Once that opens up, then I take that feel and I ask for more information. So if Sam shared that, you know, there was some things that happened in his life that didn't feel too good, then he brought that feeling forward. And then I could ask him from that feeling if he wanted to share more. And the more questions that I ask, so it's like you and I having this conversation right now. It's like us talking, and then you might say, well, how do you get that information? So you see how I'll share something and then you ask me a question about it. We can do the same thing with our animals, but we're just doing it in a different way. We're doing it in an energetic way. So I hope I'm answering your question, because I think if I go back to your question, when Sam or when an animal will share with me, it depends on how that animal communicates and how they want to bring that forward. So a lot of times I get the feel, but then with that feel, I'll ask a question, and then I'll get an image, or I'll get these words that come into my head, not my thinking brain head, but just these words that come forward, which feels like they come into my head, if that makes sense. And then I work with that to formulate that translation, if that makes sense. And it takes practice. It takes a lot of practice. So, say you and I talked with Sam 10 years ago, right? I wouldn't have been able to articulate it as much and as quickly as I could then, because I needed to strengthen that muscle. It's like going to the gym. And if I want to become stronger in my upper body, then I'm going to have to do specific things to strengthen my upper body. And if I only do that once and then expect my body to be strong on the upper, it's not going to work. I have to keep going back to the gym to keep strengthening those muscles so that my upper body becomes strengthened. Well, the same thing with this. The more we practice with it, the more that information can come through and the more that we can begin to articulate it. But I think that how it can maybe sound a little confusing at first when we're communicating with our animals is because we'll get something, but we don't know what it means. We don't know what to do with it. But I think but that's where we start. We get that piece of information and then we find out what to do with it. Right. So I'm feeling this from Fluffy. Okay, Fluffy, thank you for letting me know that. So I'm feeling hungry. Okay, what does that mean? Right. So then we're going back into the sensing. So we've asked the question with our thinking brain, but we're bouncing back into our sensing. And then we're letting Fluffy share more and we're getting that information. So it's like this continuous flow of energy from one to the other, just like you and I are doing now. But we're human and we're used to talking this way. We got to remember that the animal in us, we don't speak animal, they don't speak human. So we have to share that energy in a different way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. And it's also then about trusting yourself at the same time then too.
That's a huge part. And you know what? The really cool thing about this is that your animal is your teacher and they're going to help you. They're going to help you hear them. They're going to help you. And you will begin to learn how to trust. And a great way to do that is to get validation. Now, sometimes, and I mean, our animals aren't going to say, good for you, you heard me, right? Like, way to go. I'm validating that you heard me correctly, but we can practice and we can work with other people's animals and we can share what that animal's sharing with us to their human. And that human can validate that for us so that we can learn how to trust ourselves. Right. So in my classes, that's a huge part of every single student that comes through my courses, because until they get the validation, they still don't believe that they can do this. But once they get validation from their students, from fellow peers, right, they're like, oh, I am doing this then, right? We as humans, we want proof of things. We want to know that we're doing it, not by somebody just saying you're doing it. We want to know that we're doing it and we want to have proof.
Yeah.
So getting that validation really helps us with that.
Yeah, and that's where that thinking brain comes in play, right?
Yes, it does.
It
Very
wants
much
to
so.
know.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Oh, that's neat. So it's probably a good idea to document that sort of thing when you're getting started, right? Just to maybe do a little bit of journaling of what you think, the dog or, your cat or whoever your pet is, might be what kind of messages they might be giving you, because then of course you can always go back to that and see, if it's validated.
That's
I
a great
know,
way
like,
to do it.
when Sam was ill not too long ago, I knew there was something going on. He just wasn't acting the same. There was something, his energy had changed, and finally I said, we got to go. Like, there was no, he wasn't limping, he wasn't throwing up, like there wasn't, but I knew there was something going on. So when we took him to the vet, he ended up having a thyroid problem.
Wow.
Like, his energy had really, gone
Yes.
down, right? So now he's taking thyroid pills, which is another thing that's interesting to me, is because I take them as well.
Okay.
And that is the fact that your animals are so connected to you that, very often you have the same things going on in your body as they do in theirs.
Yeah.
Do you see that a lot?
All the time. All the time. And there's a couple reasons for that. Number one, we are our animals' pack, right? And so instead of them being in their, like, they're not a wolf in the wild with another pack of wolves, or they're, we are their pack. So they spend time around humans a lot, and therefore sometimes they can also what's the word, merge in with our energy and some of the things that we go through. But then somebody might say, does that mean we're giving what they have wrong with them? Not wrong with them, but what's imbalanced within them, are we giving that to them? And I think it depends on who you ask, what the answer they'll give you. But here's the answer that animals have given me: we do not give them anything. So if you have a thyroid issue and Sam has a thyroid issue, that's not because you gave him that. What's happened is you guys on the soul level are so deeply connected that you've come here to learn through this particular part of the thyroid together, right? And yes, animals do pick up on our energy and can start mirroring us. And so a lot of times they will receive the same diagnosis or the same things that we have. But it's not because we've given them something by sharing our energy with them in a bad way. There's a reason why we end up. So Nemo, my beautiful soul friend in the form of a Chihuahua, he has tummy issues. Well, guess who else has tummy issues, right? He has a lot of things with certain kinds of foods and allergies. Guess who else has this? And we didn't have this when we first met, like him and I 10 years ago. We developed this over time, each on our own different ways and not at the same time, but we ended up mirroring each other a lot of ways in that way. So there's something that we're here to learn together on that level, right? Just like you and Sam with the thyroid.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's so interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
I know that we had at one point we had a Newfie,
Mhm.
and it was so protective of my daughter. And we got that dog. Well, we got the dog. He was already a year old. With someone that was moving, and they had to give him up. And Sarah at the time was about a year and a half when we got him.
Right.
And it was so funny how protective he was of her. And it was like he was talking to her all the time. Like he when we were up north or at my brother-in-law's, she was walking away from us going towards the house, and she was about 3 years old. And our Newfie walked in front of her. So she was like telling her, no, come back here. Like he was hurting her, right? And it
Right.
was so funny. She'd walk around him, and then he'd do it again. He'd walk the other way, and he'd walk. It was hilarious. And he would do that all the time. Like he would walk in front of her, very gentle. He never ever, he's, big Newfies are, they're so giant, eh?
Yeah, yeah.
But it was hilarious just to watch the two of them together and how protective she was over Sarah.
Wow. Yeah. It sounds like it was a really beautiful connection.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's really neat how our animals, how connected they get to us,
Absolutely.
and how they, when they're growing up together. It's, for children to have that connection as well. I think it's such a great gift for children to have.
Oh, totally agree. Yeah. One of the best gifts.
Now, you not only have dogs or cats, you also have a bearded dragon as well, right?
I have two.
We
Yeah.
have two.
So, yeah. So I have Blessing. I don't know if you can see her there in her terrarium. She kind of is melding in with the
Oh yeah.
hammocks. And then I have Brigger, who you won't be able to see, but she's over here on this side. So yeah, I had three bearded dragons actually, and then Darwin passed away a year ago last May. And then the two ladies, as they like to be called, are here, and they're 4 years old.
And do you get messages from them as well? Like
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, I do. It's different. It's different than say how a dog or a cat, might communicate. Reptiles, in my experience with them, communicate with me. I feel them in a different way, but they absolutely, this is a really crazy cracker story. Do we have time to share it?
Sure.
Okay, I won't take long, but so our unit is on the 6th floor of the building here. And Blessing, who's behind me, she was in her terrarium, and I always say goodnight to them and I turn their lights off. This is like, she was not even a year yet. So this was like almost 4 years ago. And she was, I said goodnight and I went to turn off the lights, and I could feel her, and I could feel a fear from her, but not a fear as in I'm afraid. It was more of a fear of I'm uncertain. I don't know what's happening. And I remember asking her, and I remember saying, Blessing, I feel this from you. What is this? What's going on? And she just kept saying, I don't know. I don't know. But I just, and she was trying to tell me something. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to go to bed, but if you need anything, like, give me a ding, right? Kind of energetically, because my animals will do that. I've been woken up out of sleep when somebody has needed me in that way. And I didn't hear from her. And I woke up maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours later, and I thought I'd check in on her. So I came in the office here, and I poked my head out, and it's dark. So I turned the light on, and this black thing flew out of her terrarium and started circling frantically around the room. It was a bat. And I have no idea how this bat got in here.
Oh my gosh.
Because of how our unit is set up and how our home is, like, I have no, there were no doors open, there were no windows open. But anyways, this bat was in her terrarium, and that's what she was trying to tell me. She was trying to tell me, I need some help. You're putting us to bed, but I need some help because there's something in my terrarium. But she didn't know what it was, and she didn't know what to do. And that's the message I got from her. So I'm not afraid, but I'm really uncertain about something, and I'm really uncomfortable here, but I don't know what it is. And that's what I got from her. So I could only take it so far until I checked back in on her. And meanwhile, it was a bat.
Wow.
So it's kind of a really kind of crazy story there. But, if that was a dog, that dog would share the message in a different way. With her, she shared it in the best way that she could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that is so neat.
Yeah.
Wow. It's amazing the messages that they can give us, right? If we
Absolutely.
really listen and really trust what our instincts are telling us, right?
Yep. Yep, absolutely. I don't know what made that story come up, but anyways, thanks for letting me share it.
Yeah. No, that's really neat. So I want to end our discussion here. I think that this has been great. I think it gives them a better understanding that it's really like psychic abilities. I mean, if I can, measure it against anything, right? It is a psychic ability, right? To be able to tap into that language of animals. And I know that, first of all, you had said that you had something that you could offer our listeners as well.
Yeah.
So if you can share that with us, and then also let us know where we can find you. I know, like, we can find you on Spiritual Canada. So if anyone's looking for you, they can find your link there. But where else can people find you? Oh, and maybe you could share a little bit about the harmonic egg too, if you don't mind.
Sure. So where you can find me, so you can find me online at thegalspeaks.com. If you want to learn more about the harmonic egg, you can go to harmoniceggniagara.com. And either of those sites, you can get animal communication information. So whatever site you go to kind of give a little bit about the harmonic egg is technology using sound and light frequency. And the reason why it's called the harmonic egg is because the actual pod or chamber is egg shaped. So think of an egg in an egg cup, right? Turn that egg on its side. And that's what the harmonic egg looks like. And because of the egg shape and the spiral of the egg shape, right? So the sacred geometry, the sound and light frequencies that you receive while you're inside the egg, so animals can receive it remotely, so can humans, but humans go actually in the egg. For animals, we use their photograph. And so with the sacred geometry and the spiral of the egg shape, you receive the sound and light frequencies 360 degrees around you. So it supports your nervous system, it supports your physical body, it supports your energetic bodies, and it's just a beautiful space to be able to come back into balance, come back into center, and so much more. So that's a little bit more about what the harmonic egg is. So if you go to harmonicegg.niagara.com, you can learn about that there. You can also get me online. I'm on Facebook at Harmonic Egg Niagara, and I'm also on Instagram at Harmonic Egg Niagara as well. With regards to the pet communication kit, this is something that I did a few years back, and I'm just kind of bringing it out again. It's an actual digital kit, so you can get it online, and it has all these things in it that you can start to learn and connect and build a deeper relationship with your animal through communication. So you get a getting started guide, and it kind of helps explain a little bit more about communication with animals and how to do it. It takes you through some really cool exercises and games that you can do with your animals. So whether it's just you and your animal, or whether you want to bring your whole family into it, it's a great way to deepen and strengthen that bond. From there, there's a part in there where you can learn how to use your animal's photograph to be able to communicate with them. And the reason why we would want to use their photograph is because the photograph is static. A lot of times when we're strengthening, like to this day, when I communicate with animals, I still use their photographs, because that photograph is static. It's not moving around. It's not bouncing around. It's not playing. These are all great things that animals do. But when we're trying to communicate with them and hear their messages, sometimes when they're moving around, it can be distracting. And so when we work with our photo, it's static and it doesn't move around. So I have that in there to help you learn how to strengthen that with your animal as well by using their photograph. And then there's a third one in there where it just takes it to the whole next step, and it helps you begin to hear, see, feel, know, and sense them through discovery with them. And it brings you through a whole sequence that you can do with your animal to be able to work with them and hear their messages in whatever way is going to come best for you. And so all of this, I have a pet preparedness card in there as well, a pet parent preparedness card. So it's kind of like, a card that you can put your animal's information on, so that in case of emergency, you have it really quickly at hand. And so it's just this beautiful kind of kit that I put together to help you strengthen that bond, learn how to talk with your animal, and it's my gift to you. So to get that, you can go to either one of those websites, so the galspeaks.com, and go to the free resources tab. You'll see the free pet communication kit there, or go to harmonicegg.niagara.com and go under animal communication, and you'll find access to it there as well. You just put your name and email in, and then I'll have it sent to you within minutes.
Great. I'm going to do that. And
Awesome.
I never thought about the photo. That's a very interesting way to connect. And I understand. I can kind of picture what you're saying, because you can still get the energy from the photo. And yeah, I know, it's hard to get your dog to sit for any period of time too. So
and usually when they're oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Usually when they're communicating with us, they're usually doing something anyway, right? It's not like we sit and look at each other as humans and exchange that energy through conversation. They're playing, they're doing their thing. They're eating, they're playing with their sister or whatever it is, right? They're still doing their own thing as an animal would do. So that photograph is an image captured in time. That image carries the essence and the frequency and the vibration and the energy signature of your animal. So a picture, they say a picture says 1,000 words. They actually do.
Yeah. Neat. Okay, well, thanks so much, Marybeth. This has been a really fun conversation, and I know a lot of people will find it helpful to be able to communicate with their family members a lot better.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for this time together, Kathy. You're really great to talk with. You're so easy to talk with as well. So I thank you for that, for making this experience really, really good. And so nice to connect with everybody in this way.
My thanks to Marybeth Haines, the gal who speaks with animals, for joining me today. And thank you for listening in. Be sure to subscribe to us on the Spiritual Canada YouTube channel. You can also follow us on Spotify or iTunes. Until next time, I'm Kathy Upper, and this is Uncovering Spirituality.